Hey, thanks for listening into the REC Experience. I'm your host, Jas Takhar, and today's episode is episode number 7, where we're going to go around the province and get a market update from the major cities. We brought in a lot of our realtor friends that work in those specific areas. Obviously, as you can see, joining me today is Laura Stewart, our executive producer. How are you doing, Laura?
I'm doing well. How are you, Jazzy?
I'm good. I'm just actually waiting for a meeting, and so I thought I can be outside. I know you're at the office.
Yeah, you've been a tough guy to track down these days.
Well, this past week has been really busy for us. We launched a new condo project. We've been working on our 16, 17 conditional deals for an investment in Kitchener-Waterloo, a student housing opportunity. And obviously you've been helping out, as you always do, and wearing those hats.
All those hats, yeah.
You're Laura Crazy 8 Stewart. Our listeners need to know that.
It's the truth. It's the truth.
So yeah, I thought this week's episode would be kind of neat if we went around, so kids are back to school, and it would be nice if we gave our listeners and now our YouTube watchers an idea of what's happening in the market in cities outside of Toronto. But then, as you mentioned, you thought it would be a great idea if we talked about the importance of specific market indicators.
Yeah, I mean, what's happening in the GTA isn't necessarily what's happening in individual markets in and around Southern Ontario. So we wanted to talk to some different agents who specialize in different cities and locations and get a better idea of what's happening in those markets.
Yeah, so we've always said that you could drop us off in any city in the world, and within a couple of days, we know what indicators to look for to kind of give us an idea of what's happening in the market. And what you want to look for is average prices. What's happening with average prices? Was there an increase or decrease from last year, as well as months of inventory? So from a buyer's perspective, if all the homes that are currently listed on the market right now, if they finish as all sold, how many months of inventory is left? And that's always a great indicator. As well as from a seller's perspective, you want to know days on market. If I'm thinking about selling my home, Laura, how many days is it going to take to sell?
Exactly. And we also asked them some of the trends and some interesting little tidbits they had for our listeners. So I'm actually going to ask you the same questions about the GTA.
Oh, so you're going to... Oh, so you want to flip
I'm going to put you on the spot.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the GTA. Right now we have the latest stats from August just came in yesterday. And so these are, hot off the press, so to speak. Average price in the Greater Toronto area is slightly over $785,000. Now that's taking into consideration downtown Toronto condos, right up into homes in Richmond Hill and Brampton. And so as from a buyer's perspective, you definitely want to take a look at what the area that you're looking at, what's happening specifically in that micro market. What do we mean by that? Well, if you're looking at downtown Toronto, understand within downtown Toronto, there's probably, I'm going to say close to 7 or 8 micro markets. You have the King West area, you have King East, you have Bay and College and Financial District and the Harbour Front. Obviously within the Greater Toronto area, and again for our out of province listeners, that's probably about a 45 to 50 kilometer radius. You're at, I'm going to say like 30, 40, or maybe even 50 micro markets. So again, from a buyer's perspective, you definitely want to dive into it to find out exactly what's happening in the area that you're looking at.
Well, and there's not just those micro markets in terms of geography. There's also micro markets in terms of housing type, right?
Oh, for sure. Great point, Laura. If you're looking at a condo, and that's actually one of the trends, and I know I'm kind of jumping because I know you're going to ask about what certain trends are happening in the GTA. We're starting to see the gap. This has taken about almost 10 years now. The gap between a condo apartment and a single family home has been the smallest that we've seen in the last 10 years. So a lot of buyers, condo owners, I should say, are starting to sell their condos to move it into a bigger home, albeit a townhome, a semi-detached, or a detached home, because that gap has shrunk now. And so I know you see that all the time, Laura, as well, with our team of 20 realtors. There's a lot of people who are selling and buying at the same time.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. We see it all the time.
Another market indicator that we should definitely talk about is what's happening specifically in the condo market. And what we've seen there in a month-to-month increase, we're seeing a little over 10%. Yeah, you're hearing this right. So 10% month-over-month increase just on condos alone. And, you know, one of the major reasons that is because affordability, right? We have a lot of people coming into the city and into Greater Toronto area, but there's just not a lot of supply, and a lot of buyers, specifically first-time home buyers, are okay with living with something a little bit smaller. They don't need the 2,500 square foot home with the big lot in the suburbs. They want to stay as close as possible to where they work, and majority of their jobs are in downtown Toronto.
Well, and to that point, Jas, in the last year when housing prices for detached homes were decreasing, we actually saw that the condo market, that was the market where we still were seeing increases in prices. So, you know, multiple offers are still very common, not just for buying and selling, but for leases as well.
Guys, as always, if you're interested in getting a more detailed report about your area, if you're thinking of selling or thinking about buying, just email us, comment. More importantly, from our podcast, I hope we're bringing enough value in terms of content over our episodes. Feel free to share this episode and all of our other episodes wherever you listen to podcasts. Very easy to get a hold of us, and we love the support and the feedback. A lot of people are telling me, on my calls, Laura, that they're so happy we brought a female voice in because they're kind of tired of my voice.
My female raspy voice.
Exactly. So why don't we introduce our lineup today? So
who do we got?
We have coming up from Hamilton, a very, very close friend of mine, Mike Heddle from the Heddle Group, who's been servicing the Hamilton area for close to a decade now. We from London. If you haven't seen this gentleman, Justin Konikow from Prime Brokerage, this guy is all over social, doing his thing on YouTube. His daily vlog is kick ass. It's amazing. You got to take a look at it.
And at the end of his segment, he gives us a little shout out too, I think.
Oh, you got to watch for that.
Listeners got to watch for that. Yeah.
Good job. Good job, Laura. And then another very, very good friend of ours that we do a lot of business with each other is Steve Bailey from the Bailey Group, who handles all things Kitchener-Waterloo. And then we have Mr. Ottawa, Tony Miller from the nation's capital, going to talk to us about what's happening in that market. Guys, as always, feedback is so important to us. We love you guys. Thank you for all that. Laura, you're awesome.
Thanks, Jas. I try.
Thank you. All right, guys. Hope you enjoy this episode. Take care.
Thanks, Justin, for joining us. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good, brother. How are you doing?
Good, buddy. I wanted to get you onto our podcast for a very long time. I appreciate it. You're going to be bringing us the stats from London, Justin, and congratulations on the new branding for Prime Real Estate. Again, I'm sure that was, there was a lot involved to getting all that done. So again, congratulations to you, my friend.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's a long road. I know you guys went through something similar too, but it's the right fit, right? And similar to you guys, I like taking what we do and doing it on the next level. And I think that's why we both kind of run the firms the way we do in our respective markets.
We were just talking off air a second ago, and we're trying to keep up with you, my friend, with all the stuff you're doing on social. Guys, to our listeners and our YouTube watchers, if you haven't checked out what Justin's doing in London, you're crazy. You got to see what he's up to. We'll make sure we share all his handles. But Justin, let's dive into the stats, my friend. So from a London perspective, what are we seeing? Like, what's kind of average prices right now in London, Ontario, my friend?
Okay, average prices on a monthly basis, most recent stats were $378. Gets you a typical home in London, Ontario. Year to date, it's $364. And I do want to just do a quick snapshot. Last year, we were around $340s. The year before that, around $315. So you are seeing big jumps in that average price. And I mean, you can call it the Toronto effect if you want. You've seen it come down from your areas where the affordability of London is driving the prices up. And I think what's happening is the locals think the prices should be here, and they still got that mindset that, oh man, that house can't be worth more than this much. Outside people come in and they say, wow, that's a steal for that property. So I think what's happening is the locals have to grow up a bit, and then you're going to still see that influx of outside money coming into the city.
What are we seeing in terms of listings, my friend, like days on market? How long are homes now staying on the market right now?
So it's funny, our board doesn't actually track that statistic. I've been asking them for years to give us average days on market, but I actually track it myself.
Not surprised.
And it's similar. It's funny, right? Like, it depends on the product, and London's very versatile as a market. So I would say as a whole, you're looking at about 30 days on market. If you haven't sold your house in 30 days, there's something wrong with the price. There's something wrong with the marketing. Maybe you should get a fresh perspective on it. But if it's priced correctly and it's marketed correctly, it's selling the second that you list it. I mean, you're holding offers for a week. It's going in multiples. It's selling for $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 over. I was just involved in one that almost won $106,000 over. So, I mean, there is a pretty big gap, but I mean, if you're setting a good expectation on a higher range home, that's still going to take a little bit more time to sell. Anything for first-time home buyers, so let's say like 150 to 3, is going to sell in multiples very quickly. As you get closer to that 5 mark, it takes a little bit more time, and you got to be on point with your pricing strategy.
Awesome. In terms of months of inventory, our listeners know why that's a very important market indicator. What are we seeing in London there?
Crucial stat, 1.7 months of inventory. So it's surprising, right? Like, for a little sleepy town like London, it's waking up. And like, the way I look at it is, when we run a brokerage, we carry anywhere from 10 to 25 listings at one time. And what we're going to see is, we're planning what we're doing in 3 months now, because the inventory that we're listing is going to sell right away, right? So you really got to have a plan from a brokerage perspective. Our sellers, I actually posted something about this the other day. We have a laundry list of listings that are upcoming, and we're playing the market with timing. I don't know about your market, but our market fluctuates pretty heavily with our long weekends. Maybe Canadians just like cottaging. They pack up. They don't pay attention.
Well, we get a couple of months. We get a couple of months of nice weather here, right? So for those 2-3 months in the summer, it's understandable why a lot of buyers are just taking off. Sellers don't want to get their homes prepared. I'm sure you see that in London, like you mentioned.
And agents too, right? Like, it's funny, the Monday on the long weekend when I come back, I always try and smash a bunch of deals, because I know all the other agents are still on the way back. So it's market timing. But yeah, 1.7 months of inventory to answer your question.
Perfect. Trends. What are we seeing in your area in terms of trends right now? Just talk to us about it, man.
So I call it neighborhood chasing. What I'm seeing is, people are seeing capital appreciations in neighborhoods where, let's say, I'll use, for example, Byron is in the west end of the city, very desired neighborhood. You used to be able to get a house there for, $250, and then those prices got pushed up to the 4s and the 5s. Now Oak Ridge is becoming that area, and you can still buy houses, let's say, in the 3s, but they're starting to go up to the 4s and the 5s, which is good because it's changing values in different areas, and the, say, lower value areas are seeing that boost in appreciation as well. I just talked to a client this morning. She bought a first-time home in the 150s, 4 years ago, and her home value is up to 325, and she backs onto a beautiful park. In your market, her house would probably be worth $500,000 easily, right? So
for sure.
You're seeing that, if not more, and people are getting really emotional. And I tell my buyers, keep an open mind. You don't necessarily have to be in that neighborhood that's crazy hot right now. Let's keep an eye out for other neighborhoods that are on their way there, that have just as good quality schools, living, everything else. And you want to buy low and you want to sell high, right? You
For sure.
Want to get emotional. You want to work with somebody who knows what they're talking about, and don't get caught up in the hype, as they say.
Justin, I know you do a lot of work with investors as well.
Yep.
Are we seeing properties, and can investors expect to purchase properties where at least the income that they're receiving covers their expenses? If so, let us know. And if not, like, what would be kind of the negative cash flow that they might have to carry on a monthly basis?
So it's pretty much cash flow is king right now. I'd say if you can get in a property, break even cash flow, a couple $100 a month, do it. And typically those properties are going to be in really good areas. The ones that people are running their numbers on, that cash flow like $1,000 a month, those are in crazy high vacancy areas. They're not properties that I would necessarily recommend to clients. You know me, I talk people out of buying those properties because I know they're going to be headaches.
It's why we come to you, Justin. It's why we come to you, right? Because you give us the straight goods in that sense, man.
And that's what it is, right? Like, I'm not going to put somebody in something I wouldn't buy myself. We just did a fiveplex and a fourplex side by side with two of our investors, and there are going to be a lot of work. And I mean, we showed them to four other investors that I knew weren't the right fit for this property, but we got two guys that are ready to rock on them and are going to do the work, and they're going to benefit from the uptick in the rents that they're going to get. So to circle back around, our cap rates right now, capitalization rates about 5.5, fluctuates pretty heavily by area, but you're still in a nice little pocket where you can get good cash flowing properties. A lot of underperforming. London's just that town. People have owned these properties for 20, 30 years. They bought them so cheap. They can have it rented for $375 to $450 a month, not increase the rent. And then that offers an opportunity for somebody to come in, reposition the property, and get it cash flowing nicely for them.
That's amazing. Justin, I know how busy you are, buddy. Thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to have you here in Toronto to be part of our wrap. Yeah, man, like, you're going to come by, we're going to have dinner, have some wine, and we're going to turn on the mics and the cameras, man. And we're going to have a roundtable discussion with, some other of our focused realtors when it comes to investment opportunities and properties, and just, shoot the breeze, as I like to say, right?
I like it. I got some reading to do before I go there, so I'm going to go read the Real Estate Intelligence book by RAC. So
I love
thanks,
you.
brother.
Thanks, Justin. Talk to you soon, brother.
Appreciate you having us on. See you, bud. Take care. Bye.
When homes are selling fast, who can ensure you'll get the most money for yours? I'm Barbara Corcoran, and I've managed agents who have sold homes for thousands of dollars over list price. The key is to hire the agent with a smart, aggressive marketing plan. In the Waterloo region and Wellington County, no agent spends more marketing dollars or sells more homes than Steve Bailey. If Steve can't sell your home at a price and deadline you agreed to, he will buy it. Go to soldbybailey.com and get top dollar for your home.
All right. Thanks, Steve Bailey, for joining us. I really appreciate it. I know you're really busy with everything you do with Top $1 Million show that you're on, as well as the managing of your team, the Steve Bailey Group. So again, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Great to be.
So I'm always interested in the Kitchener-Waterloo area, Steve, because of all the things that's happening there, transit. Obviously, there's two major universities there. It's why I wanted to make sure, you being from there and working there, you give us the straight goods and our listeners the straight goods on what's happening in the market. So what's kind of average prices and stuff right now in that area, Steve?
Average price in the region. So if you look at the whole of Kitchener-Waterloo, Cambridge, Guelph, and take us as a region, we're trending anywhere on the low end 440 all the way up to about 460,000, depending on the area you're looking at and what side of the market.
Now, like, what can someone get for that in between that number, say 425? Like, what can buyers expect to pick up? Are we talking semi-detached homes, detached homes, townhomes? What type of homes are generally in that average price?
Generally, on average, if you're looking at some of the busier regions, 401 corridor and some of the nicer areas, you'd be looking really right now at a townhouse, maybe a semi-detached. But if you get into some of the older areas, wartime homes, you can still get into a detached 1.5-story small bungalow for those numbers.
And so what's kind of days on market for listings? Because you and your team do majority of the listings that happen in that area. What are we seeing on days on market there?
We're still seeing it very, very good. We're seeing about 25 days on average, which still, for any seller putting your house up on the market and saying it's going to be done and over within 25 days is still very, very strong.
That's fantastic. And months of inventory, like, what can buyers kind of expect?
So months on inventory right now, we're trending just below 2. So about 1.8, 1.9 months of inventory. And to be honest with you, Jas, that seems to be across the board. Even Toronto's report that's out in the Globe and Mail today, they're trending basically right on point.
So we're still seeing a seller's market, right? Because as we mentioned earlier, and as obviously and you educate all your clients, similar to how we do, you're under that 3-4 month threshold of months of inventory. It's still a seller's market.
It is 100%. I mean, unless you've got the right product at the right price, it is a seller's market, 100%.
And what kind of trends are we seeing right now in the Kitchener-Waterloo area?
So, I mean, just like everybody else, I mean, the good trends are economy is still strong. Unemployment's still low. Those are continuing to be good trends across Southern Ontario. The reality, though, is that we're seeing about a 20% reduction in sales, not prices, in sales. And that's across the board this year. So With lower inventory, though, has come those lower sales numbers. So I don't think it's a direct reflection of how the market's performing. As you're seeing in most markets, including Toronto, which is usually our indicator, average prices across the board are up.
Right. And, we're just noticing, I got off the phone with our friends from Hamilton, London, Ottawa, and obviously I spoke a little bit more about Toronto and kind of the greater Toronto area. We're just noticing homeowners are staying in their homes a little bit longer. It's why if you drive by on a Saturday or Sunday to Home Depot, you see long lineups, right? They're just doing more renovations. Are you kind of noticing the same thing as well?
We are, yeah. And I mean, to be honest, you look at Home Depot and all the do-it-yourselfers, but drive down some nice neighborhoods and you're seeing renovation companies there, and people are injecting a lot of money into their homes. And I think the reality is when they're selling these big homes, what are they going to replace them with?
For sure. Steve, I know you're not, you're not shy of the camera and stuff. Give us an update. What's going on with you personally, man, with the show and your team? I want to hear a little bit more about it. I want our listeners to hear.
We're busy. You know what? It's a different busy this year, though. We're finding this year, as you see days on the market increase a bit more, managing sellers' expectations is key for us right now, because we're not in the frenzy of early 2017 anymore. We can't just put a house up and, run wild with it for 7 days and hope for the best, right? There's now increased marketing strategies that come, and sellers are becoming a little more demanding, which is fine. We're going back to the way it used to be a few years ago, where you've got to work the system, you've got to work the sellers, you've got to work the buyers, and you've really got to get a good marketing strategy and make sure you're on top of things.
Well, I know you guys are at the top of your game when it comes to all of that. Steve, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. I'm going to extend an invitation to you that I did with the other guys as well. Probably right around after Thanksgiving, I'm planning a little real estate roundtable, so to speak, where we all get together and shoot the breeze. I'll bring the cameras out. I'll bring the audio equipment out, and we go for a couple of sessions with some wine and some dinner, and we'll record our conversation, because you have a wealth of knowledge, and I think we need to get that out there in terms of value to our listeners, as well as our friends on YouTube as well.
That's amazing, Jas. Look forward to it.
All right, take care, buddy. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jas.
Cool, man. Thanks for joining us, Mike Heddle. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Mike's been a really good friend of ours here at the REC. He works out of Hamilton with the Heddle Group, and you're obviously, the principal there with the Heddle Group. Mike, I really wanted to give our listeners, and now obviously our YouTube watchers, an idea of what's happening in the Hamilton market. The question that we always get, and I'm sure you get it, even in the washroom, how's the market, right?
Yeah, I love that question. How's the market? What market are we talking about? Are we talking about the luxury market, the condo market? There's micro markets within the entire segment, and there's micro markets even within each district in our area. So the area that myself and the team specialize and trade in, I'm a Hamiltonian. I was born in Dundas. We cover a pretty big geographical region, really from parts of Burlington around the western part of Lake Ontario into Hamilton, Dundas, Ancaster, Brantford, and out to parts of St. Catharines. So myself and the team, we do cover a large geographical region. So to say, how's the market? And I'm going to show you some analytics here. It depends on what market we're talking about. But as a whole, the market's been very strong. Probably much like what you guys are seeing in Toronto, or really throughout the country. We saw some government intervention, just over a year ago, and in the graphs, hopefully you guys will be able to put them up. It shows that, across really the board, we went almost into a balanced market for a few months, but we're back down into a seller's market. We're running at about 1.9 months of inventory if I look at the Hamilton proper number. And as you know, and maybe to share with some of your listeners, anything between the 4 to 6 months of inventory is typically considered a balanced marketplace. So when we're talking 2 months worth of inventory, we're in a strong seller's market.
And now what are we seeing in, so you obviously touched on months of inventory, very important. I just went through, the reason that's important with our listeners a little earlier. Days on market. What's kind of average days on market we're seeing on for listings right now?
Sure. So we're up to about 41 days on market as an average, which truly, if you put things in perspective, in Florida, I think they're about 6 months average days on market. So, we're back to more a normalized marketplace. As human beings, we've all got a short-term memory, and we remember the days where you just put a for sale sign up, which, is getting longer ago, but not that long ago, and we'd be sold in, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days. So running at about 41 days on market right now is typically what we would see if we looked at a 10-year average.
And what are we seeing in terms of average pricing? And then if you don't mind, just kind of a second question is, has that average price increased or decreased from last year?
Sure, you're going to fall off your chair here, because when I tell you our average price in Hamilton is only $390,000 or $387,000, even most local Hamiltonians will say, "I don't believe you, Mike," because we do get up into the $1 million mark. But if I take a look at our core Hamilton communities, our average price last month was $387,000, and that's up about 2.6% over last August.
And that's very healthy, right? I mean, a lot of people, as you just mentioned, have a short-term memory, but 2.5%, 3%, 4% increase is a very healthy appreciation rate. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, put it in check with inflation. So our real estate, even in a suppressed market, if you open the newspapers today, you're going to hear that the market's tumbling, or you might read another article that prices are up.
Whatever bleeds leads, right, in the media.
That's right. But at 2.6% in a soft market of August, if I take a look at an annual cycle and we take a look at which months we typically see the majority of sales, they're usually in the spring and the fall. So we just got through the dog days of August here, and we see our average price up. We see our average price up about 2.6%, and that's outperforming inflation. So.
What kind of trends are we seeing with in your current market in terms of what properties people are buying? Has there been a shift now to condo buyers or semi-detached townhomes? I really want you to talk to that point, if you don't mind.
Yeah, as you know, and we've known each other for quite some time now, the team really specializes in three primary areas. We do some new sales. We've got a couple of clients that are new build, and we're seeing that sales process really take longer through the information gathering stage. So, again, let's go back to this irrational market that we saw about a year ago. People would buy in and buy a site unseen, and half the time they didn't even know what they're buying in the new homes world. That sales process is just lengthened in terms of that information gathering stage. So that's what we're seeing on the new home front. When it comes to resale, which is a big component of our business, we're seeing the same. Buyers are taking more time. They know that they've got more time. And in fact, there are some markets, and I've illustrated some graphs. I don't know if we want to run through those, but as I dive within each micro market, for example, Hamilton West is one of our strongest markets. To your listeners in Toronto, they might know that as the Aberdeen or the Durham neighborhood, which is a fantastic area, or McMaster University. And those markets are always remain strong. But one district within there reached up into a balanced marketplace. So if you're a resale buyer or an investor, and I'll talk about investors, you should be looking at micro markets whereby the market has gone into perhaps a buyer's market or a more balanced market to be able to negotiate. And if you're a seller, your broker should be sitting with you and explaining, well, perhaps why are you reaching 40 days on market or 60 days on market? Because you might be in a micro market that is experiencing more of a balanced marketplace.
I mean, we talk about that all the time in Toronto. I mean, you mentioned it earlier. Which market are you asking about? Because within even downtown Toronto, in the condo market, you could go from the Harbourfront to the financial district to King West or the east side of downtown, and they're all totally different price ranges, as well as what rents you're getting as well, right? And so your point about micro markets is bang on. Mike, I really wanted to thank you for your time, buddy. Thanks for inviting us into your home as well. Beautiful home you have there.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure chatting with you guys. And I love what you guys are doing out there with the podcast. So
thank you so much, Mike. And we're going to have, yourself and some of our other realtor friends for a round table and really go in depth in a conversation in the very near future, just talking about the process on how to look for an investment of property. I hope you can join us for that, my friend.
I love it. That sounds good.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Really appreciate it, buddy. Take care.
Thanks. Bye now.
Mr. Keith Williams, thanks for joining us. How you doing today, my friend?
I am doing awesome. How are you?
Good, Keith. I know you're in the car today. So again, thanks for taking the time to pull over and have a discussion with our listeners. For those that don't know, Keith is one of the main principals in the Keith and Williams and Follows team in Durham. Too bad your wife couldn't join us. But again, thanks for joining us, Keith.
You're welcome. Good to see you.
Keith, as we've been doing with some of our other realtors here in the province, we've been going around and wanting to get our listeners to, get educated on what's happening in certain markets. And obviously, when we talk about Durham, you're the first person I'm going to call. You deal with a lot of our clients as well. What's happening in Durham, man? Like, what are you seeing in average prices right now?
Well, the stats just came out today, and we always compile them and put them out there and talk about them and talk about the background behind the stats. But the average price in Durham in August of this year, $590,706. Now, that compares in August, $587,000. So it's not up a lot. It's just nudged up, but it's a solid number.
How did that compare to last year? Because I think you mentioned that you were comparing it to last month, right? So how did that compare to last year in 2017?
Yeah, compared to August of 2017, it's up 0.6%. Now, that's just for August against August.
Right.
I don't have the numbers in front of me for the entire year, but
even a 6, as you look over those numbers, I mean, even a 6%, 6.9% increase, I mean, that's a very healthy market.
Well, 0.6%, I said. It's just up about $3,000 over last year. But I think on year to date, we're probably running in the area of a 3% increase. And don't forget, in the old days, 3 to 6% was your average year over year increase. That's not a bad number. And we're falling right in that range today.
In terms of days on market, like what are we seeing there now, Keith? Like how long are listings staying on the market?
Days on market for August was 28 days. That's certainly reasonable, and it's trailed that all year in that sort of range of. I have it here from 20 days to 30 days. So on average, a month on market if you're priced right. So that's not a bad number.
And as our listeners know, that's generally the average what we're seeing kind of in the province now. When we talk about months of inventory, that being obviously a very important market indicator, what are we seeing in Durham?
In Durham, last month it ran 2.4 months of inventory. And that's not a bad number at all. As you know, the way we define that is 0 to 4 months is seller market, 4 to 6 months balance market, anything above 6 months is a buyer's market. So we're still in a good, strong market. During the craziness, just to put that in perspective, of 2017, at its height, that I'm just going to put my window up here so I don't.
Yeah, no worries.
We were running about 10 days on market. That's how ridiculous it was. Now we're at 2.5 months on market, which is fine historically. That's an average. That just tells the seller you got to be priced right to get your home sold ahead of all the other ones on the market.
Right, and from a buyer's perspective, they're going to have a little bit more choice, which is always nice. It's not like again, referencing last year in all that craziness, at least buyers have some more choice. They don't have to make a decision within the next 2 hours, because if a home went up today, it's going to sell in the next 2-3 hours, right? Is what we were seeing.
Yeah, exactly. And we're finding that our buyers are taking their time. They're looking at a few more homes. They're not pressured to make an on-the-spot decision. And then when they do make an offer, the nice part is they have their conditions in there. So we're back to home inspections, financing conditions. So
how nice is that to see again, Pete? Like we could do a financing condition and a home inspection condition. What a concept, right?
I know. I've died and gone to heaven as an agent.
What kind of trends are you seeing right now?
What kind of trends? This year, we're seeing a lot of, the move up and the the retirees, downsizing and whatnot. And I think the one area where there's a little bit of a hole, which doesn't please me, is those first-time buyers just getting into the market. I think those were the ones that were hardest hit by the stress testing and the little bit of interest rate increases we've had. And I'd like to see that come back. I don't know if it's going to take the government to step in and help a little bit, or for just things to go along for a while and become a little more stable. So that's the one little gap. But to that end, we're kicking off our home buyer seminars again to try to educate those first-time home buyers. People can go onto our Facebook and then get information about that. Our first home buyer workshop is October 11th in Whitby. You know, it's about a 2 to 3 hour workshop, and it covers everything. So that kind of education may help. Sorry to give myself a plug.
As you should, my friend. No, as you should. I've been working with you for years, and I know the value you're going to bring to anyone who attends that workshop. You know, I'll be more than happy to make sure we let people know about the date, the time, whatever we can do to help. Talking about first-time buyers within Durham, are you noticing some are moving from, say, you know, originally thinking about buying in Pickering, but now they're getting priced out of Pickering. They're going to Ajax or Whitby and even a little bit further east. Is that starting to happen, the whole drive till you qualify type of thing?
Yeah, you're seeing that. You know, as you go eastward, it gets more affordable. So from Pickering to Ajax to Whitby to Oshawa to Curtis to Bowmanville to Newcastle, it becomes more affordable, but you're adding to your commute time a little bit, you know. So that's the trade-off. But I just took a look a couple hours ago in Clarington, which consists of Curtis and Bowmanville and Newcastle. I put up 50 listings between the price range of $400 and $500. That's affordable for first-time buyers. And I think maybe a lot of buyers don't know that. So there is a lot of product out there to choose from. And that consists of townhomes, links, detached homes, fully detached, between $400,000 and $500,000. So very affordable for a first-time buyer.
And for our out-of-province listeners, if they're in an area, say like Clarington, how far is that exactly to get to, say, downtown Toronto on the GO train?
You know, that's about 60 kilometers. So if you put it in miles, what's that? Maybe 30 miles. But
30,
that's a typical,
35 miles. Yep.
Yeah, and you get most people right now get the GO train at Oshawa, and that goes right into Union Station. And that train is being expanded out to Bowmanville. It's in the works now, and going to take a few years to complete. But I mean, people commute all the way into Toronto from Coburg, which is Northumberland County. I mean, that's almost an hour east of Oshawa. So it's very doable.
At the end of the day, again, you have to, if you're thinking about getting into a bigger home and you can't afford certain areas within the core of Durham, you're just going to have to go out a little bit further and deal with a little bit more of a travel time. And I think buyers are okay with that, and I'm sure you're seeing the same thing.
Hey, there's always a trade-off, you know. What you get on the plus side is it's a good quality of life. You know, these towns have a nice sense of community. Bowmanville has a jazz festival, apple festivals. You know, they're very family-oriented. Newcastle's a beautiful little town, and you're in the country. So, you know, there's a trade-off, but the quality of life is very good.
Fantastic, Keith. I know you're in between appointments. You were so nice to kind of jump in your car and get on this call and get that value out to our listeners. Again, thank you so much. We will be in touch. We're going to be doing a roundtable discussion in the next coming weeks for our listeners with all of the realtors that have been on this podcast today. And we're going to talk more in depth over a glass of wine and some food and talk about investment strategies and just kind of what's going on in the business. I hope you can join us, my friend.
Look forward to it, Jas.
Thank you so much.
Always enjoy connecting.
Say hi to that beautiful wife of yours, my friend. Take care, Keith.
I will. Okay, you too. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thanks, Tony, for joining us. I really appreciate it, buddy. I know you just got back from vacation. Thanks again for joining us, Mr. Tony Miller.
Well, thanks, Jas. Great to be here, man. Nice to come back from vacation and get to speak to you right away.
Well, actually, I should be calling you Mr. Ottawa. I know that's what that's the name you go by. And we're going through the province and getting numbers and really making sure our listeners get a good idea of what's happening in the market, especially because everyone's going back to school. So I thought it was a cool little segment to do where we gave everyone the most recent numbers. And obviously, we can't go through the province without coming to Ottawa. So again, thanks a lot, buddy.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm happy to talk to you for sure.
So do me a favor here, Tony. Let's run through some numbers. What are we seeing in Ottawa in terms of kind of like average prices?
Average prices right now, you're looking for a single family detached average $435.
Okay.
What we're looking at. Pretty good, pretty affordable, depending on definition of affordable, eh?
Yeah.
And so that's really good. It's interesting in Ottawa that what's really driving the market right now, in one aspect, are the condos. For years, for the last 3 or 4, maybe 5 years even, Jas, the condo market was in the tank here. It really sucked.
Right.
And
what does that mean? Elaborate for me a little bit more, buddy. What did you mean by that?
I guess it means that there was an oversupply. And
Okay, got it.
Condos, especially in the downtown core.
Right.
Now what's happening, I'm going to say probably because of the new mortgage rules, people were pre-qualified to buy a certain amount of home, a certain purchase price. And now with the new mortgage rules, well, they can't buy as much home. So they're looking for something more affordable. And in Ottawa, more affordable are definitely condos.
For sure.
And those have been driving the market for this year and part of last year.
So, that's interesting, right? Because here in Toronto, we've seen that happen maybe, I don't know, almost like 8 to 10 years ago. So it's kind of neat to see that kind of filter through. I was talking to some of the other agents, in and around the province, and we're starting to see that ripple effect, so to speak, as well. Like, you drive till you qualify, right? And so obviously you're also seeing that in Ottawa. In terms of that average price, you mentioned you said around $485, did you say?
$435.
$435. Well, how does that compare to kind of last year?
Last year, it's up over last year. I think, just give me 1 second here.
Yeah.
It's up over, last year the market was really good. The prices went up 5.4%.
Okay.
Which is pretty good. So 392 was the average home sale.
Not surprising, right? Not surprising that it's real estate goes up and down, upwards, right? So if you hold on to it long enough, you're obviously going to see the benefits. In terms of, I want to make sure our listeners get a good idea, Tony, of if they're thinking of selling their home in Ottawa now, what should they expect, the sellers, kind of average days on market?
Oh, right now the inventory is very low. We're all begging people to sell their homes. There's something out there. The average days on market right now are about 58 days compared to 65 for last year.
Wow. Okay.
Condos, I remember at one point, I was saying how bad condos were here. They were on the market at one point almost 115 days average. We're down to 68 days compared to 95 days last year. So it shows you how much and how the condos are really being absorbed.
So, still a seller's market then in Ottawa. Okay, that's good to know. Months of inventory, what are we seeing there?
Months of inventory, I didn't have the exact numbers, but definitely the inventory levels are very low.
As you mentioned, it's still low, and so, okay. So again, still similar to kind of right across the province, a seller's market. We're seeing that right across the board. You mentioned, one of the trends is a lot more condo buyers. Is there anything else that some of our out of province listeners might be interested to hear in terms of trends?
Well, I guess in terms of one interesting thing that we've noticed is because condo prices are so low and because our rental vacancy rate is probably at 1% or less right now, we think that some renters are actually pulling the trigger and buying condos. So that's an interesting kind of trend. You know, people who would be renters, but they can't find something to rent. So they're saying, forget it, let's just go buy a condo. And I've heard that story a lot. Have you heard of that?
Yeah. Like, so obviously, I mean, the gap between the carrying costs from rent to owning now has shrunk, obviously, in your area. We do see that a little bit in Toronto. Most of the time, what we're seeing in for the last, I'm going to say, 2 to 3 years, specifically in the downtown core, the renters are staying renters because just our affordability in Toronto in certain pockets, it's been tough. It's been tough for someone who's been renting. They just haven't got the down payment yet. But it's interesting to see that in Ottawa. That's awesome, man. Tony, I'm gonna make sure I extend the invitation that I did to all of our other friends. I know you know the guys from Hamilton as well as from London and Kitchener-Waterloo. I want you out at our real estate roundtable where we're gonna sit down for a little over an hour and a half over a glass of wine or a few, some food, and we're gonna give our insiders the most value that we possibly can in terms of what we're seeing from buyers, sellers, investors, mistakes we've seen them make, some successes. So I need you to take that trip from Ottawa to Toronto, buddy.
Oh, that would be great, man. I look forward to traveling down the 401 to see you guys again.
I love it. Thank you so much, Tony. I appreciate your time again, buddy.
Thanks, Jas. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.